Hi there, my name's Sarah Agha, and I'm delighted to be with the cast and creator of the short film Hamdardi. So, a little bit about me just before we dive into the discussion today. My name's Sarah. I run the Arab Film Club, which is a community and platform dedicated to showcasing cinema from the Arab world. I'm also a broadcaster, having presented for the BBC, and a writer and an actor. And it's with great pleasure that I'm here today to explore this really powerful and poignant 27-minute film by Ashley Tabatabai, an award-winning actor and filmmaker whose previous short, Falsified, was also longlisted for the 2018 Oscars. So a little bit about the film, because I'm aware that some of the people watching this Q&A might not have seen it yet. The logline is a bereaved immigration officer struggles with his role in the system after meeting a young Iranian brother and sister detained during the travel ban. So I'd love to start with you, Ashley, before we introduce the actors and explore a little bit more about the process from a performance background. Ashley, this film was inspired by the 2017 US travel ban. Why did you want to tell this story? And obviously, this film feels very relevant and very timely now. But why was it important to you? Why did you feel compelled to explore this on camera?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I think for me, it was a very personal story because the band's something that impacted my relatives directly. My cousin, who was in Iran and still is in Iran at the time, was unable to visit her dad when she found out that he was taken terminally ill and he was in San Francisco. He was on a green card. My aunt was out there with him. My other cousin was out there studying on a student visa. And so during this whole process of him basically spending time in the ICU and declining, she knew what was coming. She couldn't go and visit him. When he eventually passes away, she couldn't go and be with the family to mourn and grieve and do all the things that I think we would inherently take for granted as humans, that it's almost like a God-given right and probably should be. And she couldn't because she just so happened to come from a country that was on a particular list that was part of this ban. And, I think the thing for me as well was she wasn't a refugee. She wasn't looking to move there permanently. She just wanted to go and see her dad. And that was a very human story. That's something that, I saw firsthand close up. And then I realized that's not just limited to me and my family. There's plenty of other families that are being kept apart. And this broad, sweeping decision politically impacted so many people. And I think that was the genesis of the film. So a year later, I wrote it, and it really was to explore, first and foremost, the humanity behind a lot of the headlines that we see in these news articles, where it's about stats and numbers, and we become a bit numb to it. And I wanted to explore a bit of the human side behind that, and to what extent do we allow these labels we use to be more divisive than maybe they should be? And can we look under the hood of that and realize we have more in common, that a lot of times we all have parents, we have siblings, we have kids. That's more binding than you're from here, so you are therefore this.
Absolutely. And there's no more powerful or human way to do that than through a lens, in my view. So it's really quite moving, and to see those labels sort of completely disappear and be eradicated as we go on this journey with your character. So you not only wrote this film, you also co-directed it with Stefan Fairlam, and you also star in it as I suppose the protagonist, although it's a real ensemble piece. Like, everyone has their moment and the characters really shine through in this. But I want to talk a little bit about that process, because obviously you were across a number of different departments, and I imagine that might have come with some challenges, but at the same time, there's many benefits and positives as someone that this is your baby. You penned this and you also kind of spearhead the whole project. Could you tell us a little bit about how you found this process, acting, writing, and directing this very personal story for you?
Yeah, I mean, the starring thing makes it sound like such an ego trip, and I think in many ways, like maybe it was. No,
Not
I
at all.
think I think my answer to that is I was doing this in isolation, writing it, and I think with the writing process, it was so segmented. And this sounds a bit ethereal, but this is the only time I've written something that it doesn't feel like it's come from me, it's come through me. I know that sounds very cheesy, but that's the best way I can explain it. So whilst it's a story that I wrote, it doesn't feel like it's something that I own. And then it was my job to almost sort of have that vision, but then bring the people together. So the word star or lead or whatever, yes, in the traditional sense, I think is true, but this wasn't possible without bringing all these people together from different disciplines, and not just the cast that are here today, but all the other supporting cast members, the heads of department that could come on board and see that vision to execute it. And so that made my job quite easy in terms of that process. The writing was done before we ever got to the pre-production side. Pre-production was intense because it needed to be so authentic to honor this process. You know, it's an American airport. We're filming this in the UK. We've got to make that look authentic. It was also a world building exercise. It's not a short film with just 3 or 4 characters. You know, you've got 5 of the main cast here today, and there's probably another 6 or 7 that are fairly prominent on screen. So that consideration was really key. And I think giving ourselves time was essential so that we can make sure we then delivered. And then the shoot was, I want to say 8, 9 days overall. And so by the time I got to that point, the performance kind of took care of itself, I suppose. And I kind of flitted between actor and producer mode, I think, on set most days. But that's where it helped to have shorthand with Stefan and Adam. Adam is a DOP who I just know from firsthand experience can execute the vision like that. And to trust that and trust the key word, right? You are giving people the ball and saying, you run with it. I believe that you can do what we need to do. My job is to tell you this is the vision. And that helped me on the day just show up and basically just say my lines. That's what it felt like. I didn't have time to think about anything else. Yeah, they were very segmented.
Yeah. So a true collaboration. And I know Adam shot your previous short as well. So it seems like after a while, you probably develop a sort of language between you.
There's a shorthand, and Mitch was in that as well, and maybe he can attest to that at some point too, because I know there is a shorthand that we sort of feel in terms of once you start to know each other, you understand why he's doing certain things with the camera, and I think that was probably quite evident in what we did here, and I think needed at some points. You know, when we're running out of time, how can he explain what we need, and then we quickly shoot stuff in an hour and get what's needed, and then move on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, so before we turn to your brilliant actors, I just wanted to say that a word that really pinged out there for me was authentic. Like, I really feel that when I watch this film, it doesn't feel like a means to an end or ticking a box or something that's just topical. It really feels like there's a heart and soul in this story and an urgent desire to tell this story because it's important. And you can really feel that in the whole way through from start to finish. So yeah, I know authenticity has become a bit of a buzzword, but it's the all important factor, I think, in storytelling.
Oh, thank you.
So let's turn to the brilliant actors. I know some of you personally from previous projects, and also I know your work as well on screen and theatre. So on screen with us today on this call, we have Helene Maksoud, who plays the supportive immigration officer, or lawyer, sorry, Carol Williams. We have Mitchell Mullen, who plays the antagonist of the film, the hostile Hank Hansen, who is we'll come back to that. That's sort of like the villain of the film, so to speak, but there's much more to it than just that. Arian Nik, who plays the young Iranian man held up at immigration with his on-screen little sister, Ayla Rose. So I'm delighted you could all be here on this call to discuss your characters, because as I said earlier, it really is an ensemble film in many ways. Every character is really integral to the moving along with the story. So I'd really like to start with you, Helene, because I know you've worked on some many brilliant projects, often which touch on social justice issues, but not always. You have a very diverse repertoire. What was it about this script and this project that drew you in? Why did you want to be involved?
Thank you, Sarah. As Ash very eloquently described the story, he described it to me when he first approached me with the project idea. And I was very, very touched by it being such a personal story to Ash. And for myself, being of Lebanese Syrian descent, it was very personal to me as well. This travel ban would affect my family members as well. When he described the character of Carol as being sort of the moral backbone of the film, I was really intrigued by her. And what I really admired about how he'd written her and how I saw her was, there's the recurring theme of the system, trusting the system within this film. And, Carol works within this system that is incredibly dehumanizing, that it can be anyway. And what struck me about Carol was that she never loses her humanity. She manages to always see people as people. I mean, obviously, she sees the humanity of the children, she wants to fight on their behalf. But she also sees the humanity of her adversaries. She appeals to the Ethan character. She appeals to him as a father in order to help her and the children, and even appeals to Hank, reminding him that these children are innocent. They haven't done anything. And in the hopes that he will remember that aspect of their humanity. And in a world that is where people are just reduced to anonymous statistics and, as Ash said, just nationalities and numbers. I just think that the fact that she always sees human beings first and foremost, and she reminds us that we have to see the humanity in others or else we lose our own. That was really what struck me about Carol. And I was very honored to be asked to be part of this project for that reason.
Absolutely. It seems like a very personal project for you too, then, as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and a brilliant performance. It's yeah.
Thank you very much.
So you mentioned the character of Hank, who you appeal to in the film.
I try.
So, Mitch, how did you find the process embodying such a harsh and uncompromising character? And having met you at a previous film event quite recently, I now know that this character is very different to yourself and your energy and your ideology. So how did you approach that and make the character not just sort of a one-dimensional portrayal, but it felt very truthful and very nuanced? How was that process for you?
Well, I mean, Ash might be able to attest to this. Some parts of what I'm going to say is that, I mean, there certainly was an anxiety present in me for, I mean, who wants to, I mean, we all know that if you do a piece of film or a piece of television, that when people see it, they have the tendency to think that that's who you are. So I did have a kind of anxiety about, well, I mean, do I really want a lot of people to think that this is me, and if you decide to participate in a story like this, that's one of the risks, of course, that you take. But the story to me was everything, and so I just had to kind of just give up the ghost and just go with my own artistic service to the story. So and I didn't really know what the hell I was going to do until I got on set, and I know, like we talked about a shorthand. We referred to a kind of shorthand before. Worked with Ash before, Adam and Stefan before, and so I think I just decided to let it rip. First day I got on set, and I just never kind of looked back from that moment, and just decided to go, open the channel, let it go, and also that, like, I don't think it really would have made any sense to hold back in any way. I don't think that would have been in service to story. So anyway, that was just kind of how I did it. But I mean, it was a very comfortable working environment, to be fair. And I felt really comfortable taking a risk like that with everybody who was present and there on the set. I mean, just the most incredible, not only the artists that are here right now with me, here in the Zoom, but a whole bunch of other people who were just there, and just, they could hold the space for me to like pull the ripcord, So that was sort of my approach, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. And I suppose in the script, there's already a number of different approaches from people in your character's profession, which gives you, I suppose, a liberty to kind of take it to its nth degree, because
and just to pick up on what you're saying there. Now, I mean, when I saw the final cut of the film, I realized that there actually is a lot of vulnerability going on in the Hank character. There are a lot of moments, and you know, you kind of have to close read the performance in many ways because they're very small and nuanced. But Ash and Stefan really found mostly nonverbal moments with Hank that in a close examination of him, you know, you can see a lot of vulnerability in Hank. You know, you really have to give it a second or third go, I think, sometimes to get it, you know.
No, I disagree. I would say I saw it on the first watch. For me, I really saw there was just something there, and I couldn't quite describe it, but there's some real nuance in there that sort of shows that it's a very human portrayal.
Yeah,
you know,
and
it's a very
I don't
believable
think
character.
yes, and I'm not sure Hank. I think there are moments in Hank might have some second guesses about what's happening. You know, I mean, I'll leave it up to people to think about that.
And of course, without ruining the ending, we won't do that for our viewers. We wouldn't take that delight away from them. But for me, there is a look towards the ending that suggests.
I think I know the one you're referring to.
Second or third layer for me.
Yes.
So I'd encourage our viewers to watch that so they can have their own opinion on that.
Thanks.
Thank you for your answer. And that brings me on to our duo of siblings. So we have Arian, who plays the older brother Riza, and Ayla, who plays little sister Parvena. So first of all, Arian, I'd like to ask you what attracted you to this role. I know you yourself are from an Iranian background, as is the character. But in what ways was this opportunity perhaps, I don't want to speak for you, but perhaps refreshing or different to some of the other roles that you've taken on?
Yeah, I so vividly remember the morning in 2017 when the administration at the time made this horrific decision that felt incredibly unfair and Islamophobic and very hard to process, given I have so much family in the States. And I carry an Iranian passport, as do they. So the morning of that information and that news felt very vivid. So when the script came through, it felt like it gave me some agency and some integrity in the conversation. Like as an actor, at that point, an actor who wasn't writing or creating my own work, but being gifted characters and other people's work to bring to life and embody. Reading Ash's script gave me some agency, and it felt as though I could use this opportunity to platform the story of my family and the fears and anxieties I also felt, and I know so much of my community felt on that morning in 2017. I also was at home in Leeds with my mum when the script came through, and I told her about the film, and she was like completely animated and engaged, which when you have an Iranian mum and you choose to be an actor, not every project animates them and gets them as excited as this one did. So yeah, I think Ashley's script and the real opportunity to have our voices heard and the humanity behind those awful decisions, yeah, having the opportunity to portray that and bring light to it was the reason to do project. Well, to audition. I know when I got it, I was like, yeah, was it?
Right, yeah. So the film has a message as well that.
Yeah, massively, and to have the opportunity to tell stories that politically align with you and feed your soul as a creative, but also as yeah, I guess being a British Iranian and being born with brown skin, you are like immediately political anyway. Like there isn't a room you walk into where there aren't loads of preconceptions about who you are, what your faith is, what your viewpoints are on the world. So to have a script that brings nuance and texture to some of those narratives and to my community, and to play a character that was Iranian but was loving and with texture and, like I said, with nuance, as opposed to some of the two-dimensional portrayals we see of our community so often in film, was liberating and yeah, really special.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that answer. It's something I'd probably like to come back to in a bit as well, this idea of representation for people from minority backgrounds. So we'll come back to that. But I'd really love to hear from Ayla, because this, I believe, is your first ever acting role, at least sort of professional opportunity. How did you find the experience?
It was actually very fun because as it was my first, I found the script very fun to look at, and I thought it was very good. And also, I found all the people on set really nice to me, as it was my first film and I didn't know much about it, and I found it very fun, yes.
Oh, well, your performance in it is beautiful. It really stayed with me. It's very playful and just quite mesmerizing. So I really enjoyed watching you on screen. And I'm glad you had fun doing it as well. It's always nice to hear that, because yeah, it won't always be like that. But excellent. Now, obviously the two of you speak quite a lot of Farsi in the film. So for the context, your two characters don't speak a lot of English, and sort of Helene's character often works as your translator. How was it working in the Farsi language on screen? It's such a beautiful, ancient, and elegant language, which often isn't always used in humanizing portrayals, as Arian perhaps touched on. What was this experience like for you? Let's go to Arian first.
Really scary. I'd never actually done Farsi is the first language I spoke. Like, I only spoke Farsi until the age of 5 years old, until I started primary school. But having said that, I had and still have a lot of hang-ups about my English accent when I speak Farsi. I guess it's like a nuance that I think Farsi speakers pick up on. So I was like super nervous about it, but also liberated in the same way I felt liberated by the character. I felt liberated to have the language incorporated in such an authentic and beautiful way. And like you said, I think give flowers to the inheritance of the language and the beautiful lineage that it comes from, as opposed to sort of the little tidbits we often see in games or in other big films. This felt like a really beautiful use of the language, so I feel very lucky. But I was very nervous, and actually when the final cut came together from Ashley, I didn't watch it for like weeks, maybe longer, because I was genuinely, and it was a completely selfish thing, but I was just really nervous about how the forest would come across. But my mum has watched it, and she may be a bit biased, but she was pleased, as were many of my aunties. So I think if you can convince an Iranian mom and a group of Iranian aunties, you've done an all right job.
I'm sure, yes. And I suppose the fact that you took it so seriously and there were nerves there shows that you also probably put a lot of effort and thought into the pronunciation, everything, which is so essential. And it's really great to see actors take their work so diligently and to have that responsibility.
It's such a huge responsibility, because the stories get often told so little that when they do come around, you sort of really want to make sure that you're doing the character justice, but also the script justice. So yeah, I'm relieved now.
And Ayla, what was it like for you? Do you speak Farsi? What's your previous experience of the language?
I speak it a bit at home with my parents and my grandparents, as my whole family speaks Farsi. So I've been around it a lot, so I kind of picked it up. And I also know quite a bit, as my brother speaks it as well. So yes.
Nice. And I imagine your parents then, your family, were able to help you, which is amazing to have that sort of, the amount of money that professional actors spend on accent coaches and teachers, but you probably were able to use your family, which is lovely to help you.
Yes, they helped me a lot with it.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's a shout out. If I can just dive in quickly, I think, Isla's mom, Shirin, was on set the whole time, and she was also, not part of the cast or crew implicitly, but she was a big member of that and sort of helping to support the experience for us, but also for Isla. And I think that was a really nice bridge between her first time and, coming onto a set fresh and not really knowing what to expect and being prepared. And then they went through the script. She helped her with the Farsi. And I don't think that you could tell that it was her first ever acting job. I know I'm biased, but if I play the Iranian anti-role for a second, then I would say, I think Ayla did an amazing first-time job. And I think as well, just a final bit of flower giving, flowers to our casting director, Amy Jackson, who brought Ayla and Arian to us as part of that process. So, all of these things, kismet, the universe, whatever you want to call it. I think they all happen for whatever reason. And I think these two as a pairing on screen as well. Just I can't think of anybody else that would have worked in that way as sort of brother and sister. Arian took Ayla under his wing from day one. And that wasn't just when the camera's on that they felt like siblings. That was, at lunchtime, in between takes. It was very authentic and genuine. There's that word again. But it's true. And I think the authenticity, again, it's a buzzword, but it stems from, I think, people coming into this to serve the vision and the story from a place of love. And I think that was palpable. And then I think that hopefully shines through on screen. And I've hijacked the conversation there, but I just wanted to add those little two bits in.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you can really see it on screen as well, the chemistry and the love and connection between these two. So Ashley, while I have you, and while we're on the subject of language, I'd love to know what the word Hamdardi actually means.
So I took artistic license because why not? Actually, I think the direct translation leans into sympathy or empathy. That's where you kind of see it most commonly used. Sometimes it can be seen to be used to reflect compassion. And that's where I wanted to lean more into with the film, more because compassion is more of an active sort of word, right? I think sympathy, that's fine, but it doesn't really involve any sort of action from the actors or from an audience. And I think the idea of compassion is more relevant in terms of the telling of this story. The idea is we hopefully want the audience to understand all the characters in this and have some kind of compassion for them. I don't want people to just go, oh, poor kids, or oh, that poor officer. It's more about trying to engage them and make them think and question and what would they do in that situation. So that's the literal translation is sympathy or empathy, and we kind of just took a little bit of creative license there.
I'd love to add that when that script came through and I saw it said Hamdardi, like ham is togetherness and Dadi is pain, like the literal translation of the breakdown of those two words. And when I knew what the log line was and Hamdardi was the title, for me, I was like, oh my goodness, finally we're going to get to see like a human scope on this story. So I think it was a beautifully chosen name and it captures the themes and the characters and what they're exploring. So yeah, so vividly.
Just interestingly on that, I had people at the time and sort of throughout some of the production suggest as an idea, which is totally valid, but they said maybe you should consider changing the name to something that is more understandable. I want to use the word more Western. That's not the word they used, but it was kind of intimated. And, I thought about it to sort of get strategic and go, okay, well, would that make sense for festivals or whatever? And then I think that that would go against the whole ethos of what this is in the first place. So, that word again, if I go back to the cliche of this came through me, not from me, that was another example of that. So I can't imagine it being anything else other than Hamdardi.
Well, it's a brilliant film, and I'm looking forward to seeing more people's responses from it as it's sort of is seen around the world and impacts so many different people from different countries. It feels like a universal story, as well as something that is obviously about, a couple of Iranian siblings, but it's something that is timely, topical, human, empowering, thoughtful, and thought-provoking. So I would really encourage anyone watching this Q&A who hasn't seen it yet to check it out on the Academy player and engage with it and enjoy. I think it's a must-see film. I'd like to thank everyone for being on this panel discussion. It was really great to hear from Helene and Mitch. I just love your performances in this. And you're sort of diametrically opposed, I suppose, in your portrayals. So it's great to have you both here with us. And thank you, Ashley. I look forward to seeing what happens next with the film.
Thank you so much.